This story rests on a mountain of evidence. It happened in 1979 when a dental technician just outside Wright Patterson was tasked with creating a mold and a relief replica of a jawbone that looks nothing like it came from a human or even a primate. But there it is, fitting drawings of alien grace like a glove. Let's explore. Hi everyone and welcome to Project Bluebook, where we explore all things unidentified. I am Thor and thanks for tuning in. It's such an interestingly detailed account, I have to cover it. But to fully understand and appreciate how completely believable this story is, we must spend time tracing the evidence how alien bodies retrieved at Roswell and at other crashes ended up at Wright Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio, through the capable hands of the Aeromed Center and Building 18, A through G, and how this fact is supported by dozens of eyewitnesses. I know that for many, the only way to believe this kind of detail is to hold the real bone yourself and fully control its chain of custody through analysis, or meet an alien who confirms to you personally it's real. That's not going to happen yet, so the next best thing we have are people, military and civilian, who have come forward, many close to their deaths, to state how they know this to be real, which is why this is a conversation today in the 21st century and not half a century ago. And we also have the physical evidence, the replica of the jawbone itself. Piecing the stories of dozens of good people does build a picture that becomes absolutely solid in the absence of active military officials coming forth with a declaration about what they know, which they won't for a number of reasonable reasons. This is the best we have. We will cover how the bodies ended up at Wright Pat, a topic for another episode, but today it's the alien jawbone. In 1979, John Musgrove worked as a dental technician in Dayton on the 4th floor of the Brown Veterans Hospital, 30 minutes from the main gate of Wright Pat. He had worked on projects for the military before, staff dental work, reconstruction, dental recognition, jawbones, in addition to helping perhaps thousands of veterans with dental implants, crowns, and teeth repair over a 50-plus year career. He was sought after and prominent, and we can thank him for the development of procedures that reduced radioactivity during X-raying at dental offices the world over, still in practice today. It was a routine day in the fall of 1979 when the Chief of Staff of the Veterans Dental Clinic walked into his lab holding a box. Inside the box, he carefully unwrapped a jawbone. Musgrove examined it with curiosity. It was nothing like any jawbone he had ever seen before. The Chief of Staff had an urgent request. Drop what you're doing right now and get a mold of this bone done, and then create a replica of it. A complete mandible, jawbone impression. Well, this seemed completely procedural to Musgrove, except the bone looked like it came from a child perhaps? Well, not exactly. His boss then told him not to make a report of it, not to write anything down, just do the work. This was a classified project. That was an odd request and unusual, but Musgrove said yes, took the bone into his hands and examined it. It was a real bone, all right. It was old, he concluded, dehydrated, perhaps decades old. He first noticed how the ridge of the dentulus had no teeth or holes where teeth would have been. 2 indents were visibly drilled into each side of it, perhaps to pry it open at some point of examination when a full skull was present. He wondered whose skull. This jawbone was quite pitted, with no remnants of bodily tissue. Was it a young child without teeth? That didn't quite fit, because it was too big to be a deformed newborn's child's jawbone, and without teeth or a ridge for teeth, it couldn't be from a human older than 12 months. He just wasn't sure what he was looking at. The chief of staff walked out and said to call him when done. He'd come and pick it up right away, and it should be as soon as possible. Musgrove went to work, excited about this unusual mandible, but the more he stared at it, trying to figure it out, with the words of his boss in mind, not to write anything down, he soon got a little bit uneasy, realizing perhaps this was something he was not supposed to see or know existed. He created the mold and was happy with the outcome. He cleaned it up and poured in the substance to create the replica. He separated the replica from the mold and cleaned it up. It looked exactly like the original bone, and he was pleased with the outcome. He contacted his boss to tell him it was ready, and the chief of staff immediately came to pick it up. He packed down the original back into the box and put the replica in another box. He then took the mold and broke it into pieces and threw it in the trash can. When Musgrove asked if he should fill out a report on it, his boss quickly said no. Nothing was to be written down. There would be no billing or record of this job. As far as you're concerned, he said, this never happened. You didn't do this. You never saw this bone. There would be no paper trail. Then he left. Musgrove now suspected this was a military job for Wright Patterson. They had done it before. He was left wondering why they came to Brown Veterans Medical Center if this was such a hush-hush. They had dental staff at the base. He was sure it came from Wright Patterson now, without admitting to himself what it could have been. He had heard the stories, and he held this bone in his own hands. We can only speculate why it would need to be done off base. Perhaps because on the base, everything is always recorded. This needed to be unrecorded, and the Brown dental chief of staff was willing to do them a favor. This is a speculation. That this happened is not, because Musgrove would speak of it in a spectacular way that I'll demonstrate later, but for now, he quietly followed his boss to the entrance, and he probably shouldn't have, but he wanted to see who was on the receiving end of this job. He needed to confirm his suspicion. He saw two uniformed officers receive the package from his boss, a major and a colonel, and he recognized both of them. They had been to his office before. He knew they came from Wright Patterson. They shook his boss's hand, took the packages, and drove away in their military-plated vehicle. On his way to the 4th floor again, another oddity dawned on him. The entire 4th floor lab and examination room where he worked, normally staffed with 8 to 10 people, the entire area was empty. No one was there. This was highly unusual, as if the entire dental lab and examination area had been cleared out while and because he was working with that bone. He returned to his lab, dug into the trash, and put the mold back together again successfully. He then poured another relief to create a second replica. That he stuck into his pocket before leaving work that day. And that's why we have pictures. What happened later was that legendary TV journalist Carl Day became aware of John Musgrove's story. Carl was working on NBC's documentary series Inside Secret Government Warehouses. John Musgrove's story fit right into that narrative. Carl investigated Musgrove's claim, confirmed his profession at Brown Veterans Hospital, and examined his work record, including for Wright Patterson. He took the second replica to multiple dentists, who all confirmed this was a mandible, a jawbone, all right, but not of any human, or from any primate for that matter, they knew of. This creature had no teeth, naturally. Well, guess what? From alien autopsy description of corpses, the mouth is consistently described as only having a slither, without discernible teeth, and pathologists have repeatedly concluded the orifice of the alien gray was not used for talking, nor was it used for nutrition intake. At least one autopsy account describes the alien greys have no digestive system at all, a topic for another episode. TV journalist Carl Day eventually ambushed official personnel in an interview where he showed them a picture of an alien and then pulled out Musgrove's second Jawbone replica to show that it matched exactly, form-fitting perfectly the shape of their head and curvature of their jawline to a T, causing the interview subjects to stand up in protest and leave. The story goes. What happened next? John Musgrove received a visit, an officer of sorts in civil clothes, not a man in black, but on a similar mission. He commenced to threaten him with loss of his job, adding he should return the mold and the replica, or harm might come to his family. He returned the mold, but the replica he held on to, hiding it away in a bank safe near Dayton, Ohio, where it stayed from 1980 to 2009. How do we know this is true? Carl Day examined the jaw and retained the opinion of 6 dentists with a combined expertise in forensic anthropology analysis that included over 2,000 primate jawbones, and they all agreed. 1. It was a replica from an actual bone. 2. It had imprint signs proving the presence of a gum tissue at some point in the past. 3. It was not related to any existing human or primate. And 4. It didn't belong to any known Earth skeletal at all. Multiple authors and researchers into the story of alien body retrievals support this story additionally. And we have the testimony of John Musgrove himself. He worked where he says he did, at Brown, and he worked on classified projects for Wright Patterson. Donald Schmidt and Thomas Carey detailed the multiple eyewitness testimonies that collectively confirm the presence of alien bodies at Wright Patterson in their book, Inside the Real Area 51. Additionally, listen, we know there were, or are, alien bodies at Wright Patterson because dozens of people have come forward that were party to their transport, their management on base, the documentation of their presence, and their handlers, including eyewitnesses to the physical bodies being there, people who smelled their stench as they were decomposing in their storage chambers. It's a puzzle made up of pieces to form a picture that couldn't be anything but truthful. There is too much detail. There's too much matching of separate accounts from people who do not know each other, with too many of them describing the exact same event from different perspectives, and some of them are listed at the end of this program. What was the need for a replica of an alien's jawbone who died in 1947, in 1979, 32 years later? We can speculate. Comparisons to recent crashes, other body retrievals, remains found in the open. There are stories of such body retrievals from the late 70s. Only those bodies had been exposed for a while to animals and the elements that first had their way. You can watch and listen to this and other podcasts on Project Bluebook, where we explore all things unidentified. Each day, let's practice compassion and kindness. And please subscribe. I am Thor, and thanks for tuning in. See you next time.